teaching artist, teaching writer with the Matt Howe Arts Alliance, which is located, it's a nonprofit art organization located in Twist, Washington. So I'm really, really happy to be with you here today. I know that some of you are at home, doing your learning at home, and some of you might be in school part of the time and at home part of the time. So however you're seeing this video, I'm really, really happy to be joining you. I would start out today by saying that this lesson, which is called I Can Fly, it's a writing lesson, and it's connected with February being African American History Month. I'm sure you probably have heard that from your teachers and your parents. It's a month, we study about African American history all year long, but this is a special month where we might be learning more about special people in our American history, special African American people that have made a contribution. We might be reading books about African American history. And today our lesson is actually going to be based on a book written by an African American author and illustrator. And her name is Faith Ringgold. So she wrote a book. The book we're going to be looking at is called Tar Beach. She wrote lots and lots of books. And after you hear this one, you might want to go and find some of her other books. Okay, so the first thing you're going to want to do is to go to the link in the description of this video and click on that link and watch Mrs. Ringgold read the story of Tar Beach. And after you watch the video, you could watch it more than once if you wanted. I want you to listen for the really wonderful language that she uses and the images, and think about how different Cassie's neighborhood is from yours, or maybe how similar it is to yours. And then after you watch the video, then we'll talk about what you heard and how we can use that in your own writing. Okay? Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed watching that video. I love listening to Faith Ringgold read her own book. She has a wonderful voice and is so expressive, and it's a beautiful book. So as you were listening, I hope that you heard her mention some really detailed images of what their Tar Beach was like. So you probably realize that by Tar Beach, she means the top of an apartment house, where the floor is tar, made out of black tar. But that is a place that people in that apartment house would go at night, maybe, so they could see the stars. They would go during the day when the sun was out. They would have picnics up there and barbecues. They would play cards. You heard a lot of description of what it was like to be on the Tar Beach, on the top of the apartment house. And then you heard a lot of description of a big bridge in New York City called the George Washington Bridge. And evidently this is a bridge that Cassie's father worked on as a construction worker. And Cassie imagined if she could fly, then she could do lots of other things too. She could make it so her father didn't have to work on that bridge. She could own the bridge herself. And then she could also do all kinds of other things like sleep in the morning and eat ice cream every day. So this idea of flying for her became something that would allow her to do whatever she wanted in her life. So that was even a bigger meaning in this book, maybe, than just the fact that she could fly. So I hope that you enjoyed that and you go back to read that again. And now let's think about how we might write a story about flying, just like Cassie's story was about flying. I started out after I heard watched the video and heard Ms. Ringgold read her story. I thought, well, I will write. I'll do some planning and do a piece of writing too that I can share with you. And I thought, what would I like if I could fly? even for just one day, what would I want to fly over? I used to live in Minnesota, and I lived along a river called the St. Croix River. It's kind of like the Methow River or the Columbia River that you might live near. And I thought, you know, I know what that river was like where I lived, but I wonder what it would have been like if I could have flown over the top of that river. So I decided that's what I would think about and that's what I would write about. And I started out by closing my eyes and imagining if I could fly over that river, where would I start, where would I end, and what would I see? And when I opened my eyes, I wrote all of those things down that I had thought about. And then I used that list to write my paragraph. So I want to share with you the things on my list that I thought about when I had my eyes closed, the things that I thought about before I started writing my paragraph. So here's the list of things that I wrote down after I opened my eyes, after I'd been thinking about this river. I thought about all the different colors I might see if I was looking down at the river. I thought about rocky shores along the sides, and that parts of the river would have waves and ripples because of the currents in that river. I thought, well, if I'm flying, I'm probably going to be flying through some clouds. What would that be like? And I might see some birds alongside me, some eagles and some herons. If I was looking down, I was pretty sure I would see canoes and kayaks, and maybe those canoes and kayaks would be sitting on sandbars, and maybe they would just look like stripes of color along those sandbars. I knew there would be trees that would be lining the shore, and beyond the trees there would be farms, and maybe looking from above those farms would just look like a patchwork, little squares that I could see from up above. I also knew that as I got closer and closer, starting from the beginning of the river down to where it joined a bigger river, that I would see more and more houses and maybe even some small towns. And then I would begin to see city buildings and all of the kinds of boats that you would see in a city. And then finally, I would see the smaller river blending into the bigger river and disappearing. So those are the things that I wrote down on my list, and then now I will read you the paragraph that I wrote after looking at these items. Okay, here's my paragraph. And I have to tell you that this is kind of a second draft of this paragraph. I wrote it once, and then I changed some things in it, and I'm still working on it. And you can do that with your writing, always. You can write it down, and then if you want to change it or add to it or subtract or make it into a different kind of writing, you can keep working on that writing as long as you want. And I plan to do that with this writing. I might even make this into a poem someday, I don't know. But I'll read you what I have right now. It's called I Can Fly Over the River. I can fly for one day, and the first thing I want to fly over is the river. My flight starts at the beginning, where the river is just a tiny line from my vantage point high above. With my body stretched out and my eyes looking down, I follow that line as it grows wider, flowing through a patchwork of farmlands, carving through rocky banks, splitting thick forest groves, winding and curving, growing wider and wider. As I fly along, I notice birds flying along beside me. An eagle with majestic and powerful wings, weaving and diving to catch a trout in the river and then veering away to feed her eaglets. A heron flies along with me for a while too, stretching out a long neck and legs, always aware of the rookery full of nests below. I weave through cottony clouds, blocking my view, but finally dissolving away. All of a sudden I look down and I'm over my town. The river is wider with ripples and waves showing the current under the surface. There are sandbars sticking up from the water and colorful red and yellow kayaks stretched across, resting before heading down the river again. Sailboats and pontoon boats float lazily back and forth in no hurry. Tiny swimmers lay on the shore on postage-stamped towels, soaking up the warmth. My journey continues, and soon the calm, soothing scene is replaced by more and bigger houses, first spread out a few at a time, and then closer and closer together. Finally, a city. Tall, crowded buildings, smoke, noise, workboats, barges. The earlier line of river has ballooned to a highway through the city, finally slamming into the bigger river and then blending in as they both flow together out of the city back to the farmland. Okay, so that's the piece of writing that I did about the river that I lived along for quite a while. And now it's your turn to think about what you would like to write about. What, if you could fly, and this is using your imagination, where would you fly? What would you want to see from that high, high altitude up above the earth? And I'd suggest again that you start out by just stopping and closing your eyes and imagining what that would be like, writing those ideas down, and then using that as a planning sheet to then write your paragraph. So I'm hoping that you enjoy doing that writing, and when you finish, I hope you are able to share that piece of writing with your family, and maybe you can share it over Zoom with grandparents, and also that you can share it with your teacher and your classmates in some way, whether in person or by sharing a document with them over the internet. I would also like for you to know that there is another video that Met How Arts is going to provide that goes along with this. It uses the same book, Tar Beach, and helps you create a piece of art from after reading that book. And you can do either the art first and then the writing, or the writing first and then the art. It really doesn't matter. They will go together beautifully, whichever one you do first. So have a great time enjoying the book Tar Beach and all of the different activities with that. I will look forward to seeing you again next time. Bye-bye.